Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Jeannie Davison and I'm the Industry Development Manager at Screenworks. Thank you for joining us today for the second of our Gender Matters webinars, which we're excited to be hosting in collaboration with Screen Australia and the Gender Matters Taskforce. As a national organisation, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including those joining us for our webinar today, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. In particular, I'd like to pay my respects to the Nyambul people of the Bundjalung Nation, the traditional custodians of the land in the Ballina region, where I'm speaking to you from today. So now it's my great pleasure to hand you over to your facilitator for today, Rosie Lourde.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I am joining this call today from Gadigal land and my personal pronouns are she, her. Some of you might know me and some of you might not, so I'm just going to give you a tiny little bit of background just for context. I started as an actor and moved into producing, and one of my first major projects was a web series alongside the most incredible Julie Kalsif that was called Starting From Now. On the back of that, Screen Australia asked me to help look after the online production fund. So I helped people mainly in emerging capacities build up their web series and start getting their doorways into the screen agency funding. And then on the back of that, I've moved out into directing a bit more. And I've got a horror series that's going out, or a horror short as part of a series that's going out on Shudder called Dead House Dark, and a rom-com called Romance on the Menu that's currently on Netflix and just went out across the States. I am so super excited to be hosting today and moderating this incredible panel. We've got the most ridiculous speakers here, and they have got such a wealth of experience across their own directing journeys, but also their pathways into directing, which have been very different and varied. And then working on a range of projects from absolute grassroots all the way through to more semi-structured projects into some of the really big fancy pants projects that are on all of the screens and winning awards around the world. So I am very excited to see what everyone has to say, and also to hear the questions that you have as well, knowing that we are obviously going live across Australia and possibly across the world for people who might be in other places, and that we're here to be useful, really. It's not a singular pathway into directing, and it is not necessarily a simple pathway into directing. So getting as much intel from our wonderful panelists, and then also hearing what we might have missed from you and gauging where we're at from the Q&A box is going to be really useful for down the back of it. So I will stop jibber jabbering, and I'm going to introduce the wonderful Corrie Chen. Now, Corrie is an incredibly in-demand filmmaker. Some of the work you might know of hers currently is the work across Wentworth, across 5 Bedrooms, Sea Change, Mustangs, and Homecoming Queens. And she is currently in the thick of post-production on SBS's new mini-series for Gold Coast, New Gold Mountain. Corrie, how you doing?
Hello, Rosie. No, long time no speak. How are you?
It's been forever. Well, you've been very, very busy.
Yes. Yes, I have. It's so weird saying that because I don't want it to feel like a humble brag, but yes, busy.
No, it's the reality.
Indeed.
It's not a humble brag. It's
yeah,
and you've earned it. So we're here for it.
Yes, I feel very lucky. It's been a good time.
Excellent.
Career-wise, yeah.
So where do you want to start? Would you like to talk about how you got into directing? Would you like to talk about where you're currently at with New Gold Mountain?
Probably from the start is the best thing. Yeah, generally speaking. Well, probably, I'll jump back and forth because I am also aware that there's already quite a bit of information out there with like articles have written or similar, not dissimilar interviews with Screen Australia that talks about my trajectory. But certainly, I was probably like 11 or 12 when I got the bug of directing, when my dad gave me his old video camera. But then it was probably another decade before I really did anything about it, because I was so embarrassed to even say it, to even say that directing was the thing that I want to do. But yeah, so I did, I spent some time doing an arts degree, and eventually went into media, which is like my tiptoe, the transitional degree.
When your dad gave you a camera, did you know that's like, did you have that inkling already?
I knew I really liked watching movies, but and I was excited that he gave this thing to me. But God, it's just like, it's just so powerful to be able to control what the story is, and what your voice is. And yeah, so no, I don't think I really knew.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I eventually found my way at VCA, where I spent a couple of years, and another 6 years later, I got my first job.
Look, it takes its time, and it's what I find fascinating is what happens in that 6 years, or even like, and in the lead up to it, because some people there's like a fallacy, a false sense of security, and I'm going to go to film school and I'm going to go straight into a job and things are just going to happen really smoothly. And for some magical unicorns that does happen, but for the majority of us human folk, it's not that straightforward. In that 6 years from graduating VCA, what did you do?
VCA, I really loved my time at VCA, and in terms of my own path, I realized that for someone else with a different personality could have had the exact same path and have had a terrible time. Film school isn't for everyone, and not everyone has to go, and doesn't mean that that's the be all end all. But I certainly did, because I was so shy in my early 20s, or early to mid 20s, and I was I really needed a structure that really said it's okay, like, tell the story that only you can tell. And that was incredibly empowering for me. So coming out of film school, the VCA model was really make your short, go to Sundance, and make your feature, and that's the end. And I
just whatever.
And when I was at film school, television, it wasn't really cool. This was a decade ago now. It just wasn't cool at all. But I personally loved television, and obviously everyone gets in. Well, for me, I got into filmmaking because of feature films. But I also, it's not a hobby to me. Like, I want to work, and I like working, and I like being busy. And I kind of very quickly identified TV as something that I wanted to do, because I wanted to work with writers, scripts, and actors. Those were the two things I wanted to focus on. So a lot of my colleagues did have successful shorts, and some have gone on to make their features, which is great. Others went into advertising and music videos, which I didn't want to do, because it just wasn't a world that felt right for me. So I targeted television. I did a lot of note taking. That was sort of my first, I guess, paid job in television, note taking in writers' rooms, which was amazing.
Can you explain for people who might not know what note taking is, what that job is?
So the process of television, generally, there's a group of writers come together with an idea that already has some broadcast interests behind it, and these writers, they plot out what becomes the series of television, and the note taker's role, and it's generally for a very emerging filmmaker or writer, you essentially have to sort of keep up and distill everything that's happened into a room in the room for the day into a document that the writer can then use 2 weeks later when they start writing the scene breakdown or their script. And it's an incredibly hard job, because you kind of want to straddle speaking just enough so people know that you have a bit of a voice, but not get in the way as well. Because now being on the other side as, you know, one of the writers, I have seen note takers where you kind of just want to go, okay, you're messing with the flow and rhythm of the day now. But yeah, but because, you know, note taking, what was great was being able to see all these amazing writers at really the top of their game, like just spitball, and it felt like a scripting masterclass.
Wow.
That I was getting paid for.
Wow. What a job.
Yeah.
And it kind of is that intricate balance of, as you said, being able to distill the conversation in the room into a singular document, but also layer a little bit of your own flavor. So you're not just verbatim, well, you're not just, it's not too dry, but then also not misinterpreting or over elaborating on what's being said to skew it in any particular direction.
Yeah, and when I was note taking, I kind of often thought, okay, if I was writing this episode, what do I need as a writer to jog my memory for later on? And a lot of the time, like, you remember the big picture stuff, like you remember everyone saying, oh, the scene structure should be like this, but what you don't remember are the little anecdotes of, like, you know, these pearls of emotion that actually, like, the character stuff. So yeah, that was something that I was really it helped me with, you know, knowing what notes to take.
Did that lead, was that a direct pathway through to your next job or your first job?
Yes and no. Like, I wish I could say things are as direct as they seem for everyone's careers, but, you know, my very first, like, even getting note-taking jobs took what felt like a couple of years. Like, I was an observer for a little while.
How did you become an observer?
I was an observer. I think my first experience was in the very first family law room. So, you know, Matchbox at the time, and also I had the same agent as Ben Law. So Matchbox at the time, you know, were really ahead of the game and quite aware of what a room should look like in telling that story. So observer is probably too vague a term, because I was expected to actively participate. But I guess I say observer in that very first time I wasn't getting paid. But then the next room, and I actually went on and did quite a lot of rooms for Matchbox. And my first directing job was with Matchbox as well. So even though it's, like, you know, not the same people, but the same company. So it is direct, I suppose, in that within the company, you know, it's a relationship business. You kind of, people ask around and go, you know, who do you like at the moment? And I find myself asking that now as well. I'm sort of in more of a position to try and stay in touch with the younger cohort.
Amazing. And we're getting the prompt that you've got a minute left in your 10-minute spot to talk. Were there other things that you wanted to talk about right now, knowing that we'll come back for some of the questions that are starting to come through?
I think it's a really interesting time in that, you know, the conversations we're having now about trying to get newer voices into the industry across a lot of, not just gender, obviously, but it wasn't happening when I was coming through. So even though, you know, the opportunities I had with short film funding and so forth doesn't exist now, but the initiatives that do exist now are gives me a lot of hope in how the future might look quite different.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just making a note because I do want to come back and talk about initiatives and those pathways in, because as you said, the short film funds aren't there, but there are some semi-equivalents that that might be useful for people to be aware of to navigate. But let's move on, and we'll start talking to Sophie in a sec. But thank you, Corrie. We'll be inviting you back to help us answer some of the juicier questions down the second half in a moment.
No worries.
Amazing. Okay. Wow. 10 minutes goes so ridiculously quickly. That just flew by. So the next person I'm going to invite is Sophie Hyde, who is another ridiculously in-demand director. She's one of the founding members of the collective Closer Productions out of Adelaide. Some of her magnificent projects include 52 Tuesdays, Animals, the digital series Fucking Adelaide, sorry if I'm not allowed to swear, the SBS show The Hunting, and her documentaries include Life in Movement, Shut Up Little Man, which is an audio misadventure, and In My Blood It Runs. And she has just come back to Australia after shooting the most magnificent Emma Thompson in Good Luck to You, Leo Grand. Sophie, are you here to put your video on for us?
Yeah, my video is on.
Oh, there we go. I just couldn't see you.
Hi, Rosie.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Welcome back and welcome out of quarantine.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to be out of quarantine and out of the UK.
Yeah, I bet. Wow, I can't even imagine the particularly after the epic quarantine they've just been doing for the last couple of months. You were shooting during all of that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was like it's in lockdown, all of the UK. So I mean, it's not anymore, but it was actually quite nice to shoot because we weren't as at risk, and film's considered an essential service, so you can still film and TV projects, but you can't go to a restaurant or anything. But that was quite good because there was a lot of COVID around, so we're happy about that. Yeah.
You don't want to risk it. No, stay safe. So your pathway into directing was also quite unique. Where did you start?
Yeah, I was listening to Corrie and thinking just how different the pathway is to sort of looking back at it to what it feels like when you're doing it. But I mean, I came in differently, which is that I came up doing youth theatre. So youth theatre is like, you work with really great artists as a young person and you're making work at a kind of top level in some ways, but with the kind of young voice. And I always did that, and I always knew doing that I wasn't an actor, and I sort of knew that I wanted to direct. Looking back, it's very clear, but it took me a long time to be able to say, yeah, I am a director. I mean, a long time, let's just say. Even though I started directing theatre and making things, I just didn't feel like I feel like I had to become successful before I could be a director.
Yeah.
And I think, I came in, sorry, go on.
I'll be there for a sec. What do you think sits underneath that, if you don't mind me asking? Or you could just tell me to go away.
It's a complex idea. I will say, like, we're talking about women a lot today, and I will say that there's a good reason. A lot of our stats are about women and stuff, and I have the experience of being a woman, raised a woman. But I would just want to say that when I think about what we're talking about, I also mean people that have a varied experience of gender. So people that are non-binary or trans men, definitely trans women, of course, or genderqueer. Like, I think varied experiences of gender is kind of what we're talking about. And I think for me, like, there are a few notable exceptions to this, but I remember what a director looked like when I was growing up, and it certainly wasn't me.
Yeah. And
as much as you don't want to think that's what it's all about, there are people that are very much like, I'm comfortable being a director before they've ever made anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
generally they're wearing a baseball cap and have a bit of stubble and probably a little bit of a chiseled jaw. Yeah.
So look, yeah, it comes from that. But I mean, that's also a real sort of strength, I think, as you move along. Like, it's that kind of sort of self-doubt or whatever it is something that I've thought about a lot. And it can be a really negative thing, but it can also be a really positive thing if you want to make in a different way. So I kind of, I came through youth theatre, then I went to uni to do film and theatre, but I didn't really do practical, certainly not film school. And so I came out with no real idea of what a pathway was. We just didn't know. I didn't understand the industry. But I worked for a producer as an assistant, and I really hated it. I hated the hierarchy of film sets. I really disliked the way people were treated. And so I very easily could have stopped at that time, but instead I decided that I wanted to make my own work. And I started working with people that were friends, and I have continued across my career to work with friends and people that I like over and above kind of reaching for people who are above us. And through that, we kind of set up our own company, making lots of different things. And, you know, I started making video visuals for dance and theatre and nightclubs, and then moved into documentaries. And documentaries is where I stayed really for a while, and I made sort of experimental films and dance films. And yeah, then I started making feature docs, and I still really had no idea of how people made feature films or TV. And I'm in Adelaide, or well, Tandanyanga, which is the land of the Kaurna people here in South Australia. And the industry is quite strong here, but it's very different. It's not as market focused, and we're not as connected to the market. So we operate a little bit differently.
Well, the Adelaide Festival, Adelaide Film, like the festival culture in Adelaide is so strong across the different art forms. It feels like there is such a different type of celebration that happens for artists, and artists not just from Adelaide, but internationally. And do you feel like that's fostered some sort of a creative spirit that's potentially influencing this?
Oh, probably, yeah. I mean, the arts, there's a lot of crossover here, you know, between different art forms. And certainly we grow up with the Adelaide Festival, where we watch work from all over the world. And yeah, I think I had a lot of amazing access into making work, and not as much access into understanding the industry. But and maybe in some ways that was good, in some ways not. Yeah, and the Adelaide Film Festival was really instrumental in that, because they were when they started their investment fund, that was some of the first times that we started to be funded for work that we really wanted to make, rather than trying to go for an initiative or something that was sort of responsive. Yeah. And I guess then we started making these documentaries funded by Adelaide Film Festival, and then this thing called Film Lab came up, which is a low budget feature initiative. And it was very much for first time feature directors. And we got into that lab on the basis of one idea and not a script. And it was a really big turning point, because, I mean, Corrie just said she really enjoyed the moment where she was told, you know, tell the story only you can tell. And Film Lab was exactly like that. It was like, okay, what's the story that you've got and the way that you can make it that can't be made by anyone else? And for me, that was a turning point creatively, because we made this film 52 Tuesdays, where we shot it every Tuesday for a year, and we wrote it as we went. And it suited the way that we worked as a group, because we're all very interconnected, that closer. Yeah. And we also started working with Matt Bate, who directed Shut Up Little Man. And from that, we kind of formed our company. So we kind of came out of that with 2 featured docs and a featured drama that we were making all at the same time.
Phenomenal. And just because we're getting the warnings on time, I might segue that across to the clip that you were wanting to potentially show, the animals trailer. Even though it's not one of the projects you're talking about, it's kind of the next step in the journey.
Yeah.
So Ken, can we play? Thank you.
Girls are tied to beds for 2 reasons: sex and exorcisms. So which was it with you?
My feminism is about blazing a new way through old traditions. Owning our bodies.
So what do you do?
I'm a writer. But I'm trying to nail the work-life balance, or more like the work-party balance.
Jen.
Laura, sooner or later the party has to end. Why? Because you get left behind and you become a tragedy.
Tragedy plus time equals comedy. See him, other lovers, and write, and party, and still be free.
You know, none of this changes our friendship. I need to start taking things seriously.
Wait, do you hear that? It's the non-sound of the suburbs. They sell it as peace, but really it's just death closing in.
On your
danger, dear.
His mouth, his composure, his steady, loving gaze.
When I hold you
In some moments, I wanted to be owned by him.
safer on your own.
Owned.
With me, or
What is this?
follow you, follow
Who are you?
home. These words roll off my tongue.
One day, you're gonna wake up 45 and you're not gonna know how.
What's it about?
It's about a spider caught in its own web and a woman who rescues it.
So good. So wonderful. It's such an excellent movie. I remember seeing it at the cinema and just being so in love with the whole thing. How was it making it?
It was great. I mean, that was such a blissful film to make. I like hard work going to another part of the world and having to sort of find the whole city and so many of our collaborators, but the cast are amazing, and I mean I loved it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Fabulous. And I believe we probably only have 1 minute. Oh, it's time for Daina, but can you just quickly tell us about working with Emma, and we'll come back to you in the Q&A as well.
Oh, look, Emma, I just got back from the UK working with Emma Thompson. She's like just peak Emma Thompson all the time. No, she's just beautiful. Like, she's like top of her game. She's, so great at what she does, but she's so professional. She's amazing to be around, and she's a good human in every way. So, I couldn't rave about her enough, actually.
Amazing. What I might do is when we come back for the group Q&A is talk about, because it seems like in my brain, the leap from going from the trajectory of the 52 Tuesdays and then all the way up into Animals and then to like Emma Thompson on this one, they feel like they're these massive bounds, but how do they get navigated? And similarly with Corrie's work, and now what we're going to talk to Daina about as well, it would be nice to know between all three of you just how that happens, really. So why don't we put a pin in that one and we'll come back to it.
Right.
Thanks, Sophie. Okay, wow. So Daina Reid, for people who do not know, you will probably recognize her face in some capacity because she has been on our screens previously. She was an actor originally in Jim Owen, Full Frontal, the McKaylee program, and then she moved into directing with a short film that was, let me have a look, one of the Trot Fest finalists in 1999. Since then, she's directed some incredible programs, including Romper Stomper, Sunshine, Paper Giants, The Birth of Cleo, How's That?, Kerry Packer's War, Never Tear Us Apart, The In Excess Untold Story, Secret River, as well as The Outsider, David Makes Man, Space Force, The Spanish Princess, and Handmaid's Tale. What a ridiculous CV. Daina, are you with us already and I just can't see you just yet?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you now. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Where would you like to start talking?
Look, probably at the beginning. A bit like Corrie, I kind of, it's very daggy, but I saw Star Wars when I was 10, and that's when I went, oh, I want to do that.
Wow,
and,
you were 10 and you saw Star Wars. Brilliant.
I know. So it's where there's like a generation of us of those, you kind of changed your life when you saw Star Wars. So I kind of went, that's what I'm going to do. But at the same time, I was a dancer, and I was dancing as a kid on television shows in Perth because I'm a West Australian. And but then all the different states did their own shows, so little talent shows, and I was on the teams in those talent shows, a bit like Young Talent Time, but the Perth version. So I was around TV studios all the time. And I did that all through my teens. I even did my work experience. My daughter's just done her work experience, and it kind of reminded me when talking about this. I did my work experience at Channel 7 in Perth. So I was really interested in TV, even though I had a cinematic experience with, a massive, seeing God kind of experience with Star Wars. But the whole workings of a television studio I found super interesting and, and quite familiar. So I went off and did film and TV at Curtin University in West Australia. And that was a choice between you did either film or you did video. rather than television. And I remember going, so those guys in the film section, they get to do one movie a year. And if I do video, I'm going to do about 15. So I did that. So I just went, I'm going to practice more. And it was it sounds so terrible, it was real snobbery with the film versus video thing. And I just didn't get that. I went, well, really, we're all about telling a story. It doesn't matter what you shoot on, really. It's about, just telling a story and getting it shot. So I did that. And then at the same time, everyone said, oh, if you want to be a director, you better go do acting classes. So I started doing the theatre course there as well. And all my colleagues auditioned for the drama schools like NIDA, BCA and WAPA. So I did as well. And I got in. So it was kind of that real shift. And at the time I was working part-time for an ad director in Perth, making ads. He taught me a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. He was fantastic, but I had to make that shift. And I went to WAPA, which was amazing. And then kind of came out and became an actor. So then from that, I wrote my own show, my own play, which was funny. And then we ended up on the Jimoan show and then Full Frontal and the Colour Program and all that sort of stuff. So it really kind of fed the stuff I like to do. But I remember when we were doing that final live night for Full Frontal going, oh, well, that was fun, but now I really should get serious and swap over. And they used to do director's attachments on blue heelers, which was their edit suite was in the room next door to my dressing room. So I just walked in there and said, oh, can I come and do an attachment? And I interrupted their fine cut with all the head honchos and all that sort of stuff. I didn't know that was important at the time, but now I do. But I went in there and they said, yep, come in on Monday. So I started doing director's attachments on that TV show, Blue Heelers. It was right next door to where the studio where I used to do Full Frontal. They were in the next studio across. So I learned a lot doing that. I did about 4 or 5 attachments.
Amazing.
And on that show, I did some others, and I actually got involved. A producer, Andy Walker, very helpful, lovely, brilliant producer, kind of got me. I think Film Victoria used to fund some of them, so kind of taught me how to do that. And I did one on stingers and I think a few other bits and pieces. And then I got an episode to direct on Blue Heelers. I think they were looking at finding women directors. They were, so you could appeal to a female audience. I feel like, the Australians are all a bit ahead of their time, nurturing female directors in television. There's quite a few colleagues, who started at that time. So I started there and then went on to just kept going. Went on to MDA and then Secret Life of Us, and then kind of kept going, and here we are today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. And it's quite fascinating listening to that story, because I can hear, and we talked about this just for everyone else listening in, on the call yesterday when we were just prepping, that the culture has changed a bit. Like, we don't have the Blue Heelers shows and the Stingers shows that run so long now, where they can take more attachments and they can take more risks with more emerging directors. So I think that kind of goes to the conversation we started with Corrie as well. Like, there also aren't the programs to make your short films anymore, but people still need to be practicing, and they still need to be given the opportunities to learn, and how we can help find where those pathways are back in is really important. Yeah. How do you find on the shows that you work on, do you try and fight for there to be attachments and for shadow placements?
Well, I always had one on Handmaid's Tale, which was really interesting. I don't know that anyone of those attachments did an episode. I'm not sure. They could have done. And I've had attachments on lots of stuff that I've done here. But look, I too made a short film, which you mentioned, which got into Trop Fest. Now that was a very big springboard for me, for people taking me seriously, and for myself to take myself seriously. It was that little bit of success to go, oh, okay, right, you can do that. So keep going, as opposed to that's a stupid idea, give it up and do something else. So that's kind of still what I would say to everyone, is to make short films, because you can do it yourself. When I made a short film, I had to get Channel 7 were very helpful. I got, for $500, I got a Steadicam and a lighting truck, and I got all the stuff. But now I could have done it on my phone. It was shot in my house. I could have done it
in our pockets. We've got these.
So yes, that's right.
In our pockets, and we can do a lot of things. Obviously, not everything. There are some fancy things that you might need some special equipment for, but if you we do have some capacity.
There is, we have the capacity to tell that story. I mean, I would have shot it on my phone. It's just that we didn't have the technology back in 1999 to do that. We were so close, but it's just before it.
Yeah.
So that short film really was the thing that enabled all that other stuff to happen. I don't think I would have got that episode of Blue Heelers if the short film hadn't, gone to festivals and done well.
That's a really good thing to talk about, because there is that, like, the catch-22 of you need to have success to get access to success. Like, to even be given opportunities, you need to have already had some sort of success. But what are unpacking those incremental steps of doing something that you have in your capacity to get it out there, to get, even if it's for a small film festival. Obviously Trop Fest is not a small film festival, that's quite a significant one, but there are lots of,
Look, I would say, even when to get my acting career started, I did a play with my mates, that we just, in our lounge room, we just got together and we wrote it and we did it. And then we did it at a festival in Perth called the Art Rage Festival, which is the Fringe way back then. And so it's that kind of stuff. And from that, and then we toured the country with it after that. So I highly recommend, it's like what Sophie said, it's that story that only you can tell. And it comes from that place. And those little kickoff places, both the play and then the short film, were very much from my own experience, the things I was going through. So therefore you're connecting with everyone truthfully and you'll resonate. So that's, I kind of, you can, and then you feel like you got a bit of control as well. You're not waiting around for someone to, in this business, you can't wait around for anyone to give you anything. You kind of got to do it yourself.
And so then how did you go from doing how did you branch into the international sphere?
So I was most fortunate that I had a colleague of mine, is Kate Dennis, who was trailblazing before all that and had gone and done all the work over there and was working in the US. And she really helped me kind of navigate a path over there. So I just, you just kind of go, again, it's that thing of going, what have I got to lose? I'll just go and try it. I do say that, during that time of all those meetings and all the things you do in LA, I did more acting than I've done since I gave up acting. It's the character of the Australian female director I'm playing. But I just kind of, I just do what you're supposed to do, go and have the meetings. And then I had to kind of take that risk and go, don't take any work in Australia and see what happens, which is really scary, So that was really scary. And then I was fortunate that The Handmaid's Tale came up, which was mental, it was crazy. But and I've never been so nervous in my entire life on that first day.
Yeah.
It still makes me feel a bit sick when I think about how I felt.
Sure.
Stepping out of that car and starting.
Interestingly, that's actually a question in the Q&A about how do you control your nerves as a first-time director. It sounds like you possibly, like, every step of the way, it's going to be terrifying in some capacity.
It's never going away.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, it really is that the great thing about what I love about directing, you've got that whole creative thing that you've got going on with whatever, if it's your script or whatever's going on, and you're going to work with the actors, and that piece is there. But the machine of it, which I found really helpful in learning through all those attachments, is it's a step-by-step process. It's just this meeting, next meeting. Do you break down for that meeting? Do you break down for that meeting? And if you focus on those steps, okay, step, suddenly you're on the set. That's when you want to have a vomit. But you have to go, okay, now I'll just start stepping, because here we are, we're going to do, the scene starts, here's Elizabeth Moss, here's, you know, whoever. Let's just read the scene. Okay, oh, we're off, you know. So yeah, you just, if you hang on to that structure, because it's a real structured way of working, I find that gets me through.
Yeah, amazing. Let's bring back Sophie and Corrie, because I wonder if Sophie might have something to say, actually, and Corrie as well, in terms of working alongside friends as well. Yeah, great. Excellent. Well, who would like to go first? Maybe Sophie, because you were talking about the collective and working alongside friends instead of working alongside everybody. How has that influenced or impacted your nerves on set?
Oh yeah, look, I honestly don't think I would be a director if I hadn't worked with my friends to make things. I think that I work best when, like, I'm trusted, when there is like a kind of trust that you'll get somewhere. I'm not one of those people who works best like when there's a kind of challenge proposed to you, which some people do kind of really love that sort of fight against that. But for me, I need to feel like there are people kind of who have my back and we're working towards something together. So when I talk about my friends, like, my partner is also my cinematographer and editor, and my best friend that I grew up with is the person I write with, and my other best friend that I grew up with is the producer, and like, we are pretty troublingly close, do you know? Yeah. And now I know how to go out into the world. Now I have enough people that I collaborate with and have for a long time that I kind of know how to walk onto a set, and, you know, the nerves are still there, but I know what I need, do you know? But even in that way, I take as many of the people I work with as possible with me onto everything. And I also, there are certain things that I ask for, like, I almost always want a directing assistant now, and that's an emerging person. And to me, that's like a crucial part of because there's a whole production office, but no one really is working with you as a director. I want someone who wants to work as a director, can help me set up the rehearsal space, understands those little tiny things that you need are as important as like the big vision of the work, and works with you to do that. So I always have to find my people on every film set, and that's how I get through. And oftentimes your people are your cast as well, I find. Yeah.
What are those little tiny things that are just as important as the big things?
Like that everyone's got like cut up vegetables and fruit in the rehearsal room, and they've got water. Water is a big thing. I hate being on a set when no one's been given any water. I can't stop directing, and I'm like, who's got the water? Yeah. And that's not good for the film, is it? Like, that's really important. I get really frustrated when everything's plastic, like really annoyed, and it just distracts me. These little things are just, so those things, but also I want someone that will help me put together mood boards on the wall and will run off and get us things, or can be part of an exercise in the room that will kind of help everyone. Yeah. You know, those things are really important to me.
Corrie, do you have any things like that really help ground you and keep you present and sane?
Yeah, I look at animals on Instagram a lot. Like, that's my de-stressing, like, a lot. It's a huge anxiety release for me. So yeah, it's like, especially looking at, like, you know, groundhogs eating vegetables in a zoo, like, it's just the sound. I think it's a form of ASMR. Yeah. And it just lures me into this into this calmness. And but, you know, listening to the way the family that Sophie has, the creative family that Sophie has around her, I always, you know, watched with envy from afar. It's amazing. And it's also a skill. I think, like, we don't talk about the skill of collaboration enough as something that should be sought after and taught. It's sort of taken for granted or dismissed. I think maybe it's like a slightly more female trait, the generalization. But the more the more projects I work on with different kinds of people in this industry, the more I'm like, oh, a lot of the issues that we have is inability for someone to communicate what it is they want. Yeah, and which is collaboration.
Yeah, 100%. A key person in your team, in that collaborative team, would no doubt be your agents, I'm guessing, as well, like in who they are in your corner, fighting for the things that you need on set, like being the people who can argue with your collaborators as well, so that you don't need to be the person arguing.
That's right.
Yeah, because that can be really tricky. How did each of you find, well, I guess there are two parts to this question. One is, how did you first find an agent, like when you were first starting out? And then what kind of lessons did you learn along the way about whether that, if you've stuck with that same person, why they were so valuable, or if you've ended up moving, what you needed, what wasn't quite there possibly at the get-go?
I guess it was interesting for me because I had gone into that agent thing from an acting perspective, which is very much part of, like, when you graduate from an acting school, you do an audition day and all the agents come and you either get one or you don't. And, so I kind of went into that whole agent world early.
Yeah.
But I did change my agent. It was really interesting. I changed agents, and I thought it was because I needed to change my acting career, but what I needed was changing my career. So then I changed to another one. And I guess it is that thing of going, you've got to find someone who is on that same wavelength, just like both Corrie and Sophie have said, the same wavelength of the kind of story you want to tell, who's in that headspace and goes, yep, I'm going for that. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to put you into, try and make you into anything else. And I was lucky, with the agent that I got, she was very much like that. So when she really facilitated the American thing and looked for people who were the same as that, to keep that they have the same vision for you that you have.
Yeah. And did you find her, because obviously from the get-go, when you first found an agent, your first directing agent wouldn't have been the same as your acting agent, because they're very different.
No.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, I was kind of with my acting agent for a while when I was directing, but it wasn't that person's bag. Just we kind of we trundled along, but it really needed to be someone else who was tapped into that world.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic.
And were you just introduced to people? Did you just send out some cold emails? Was this on the back of the short film?
It was that I kind of kept going. I've been working for a while in television when, again, it's the same producer, Andy Walker, when, mate, you have to get a proper director's agent. So he kind of pops up at the right time. He's going to go, hey, do this, and now do that. So he kind of gave me a kick in the bum, and I approached people and found my current agent. Yeah.
So you were already working then, and
and it kind of, because I knew the producers. I had a network of those people, and so that just kept ticking over. Yeah.
How about you, Corrie? How did you find your first directing agent?
I was actually approached. It was my first year out of film school, and it's quite surprising now that I think about it, because like my film school, I'm proud of my film school shorts, but like they're fine. They didn't set the world on fire. They barely even set Melbourne on fire. Like they're just fine. But it did. There are two shorts that were very specifically about the migrant experience, and so I think it really spoke to my voice. And I got a call out of the blue. I remember, because I was like working hospitality. I worked in hospitality for a long time. I was like cleaning the toilet, and I suddenly get this call. And it was an agent in Sydney, and Daina and I have the same agent, and who had I seen my short online, because I was also did something a bit different compared to my colleagues, which was I put my shorts online quite early. And at that time, like 10 years ago, it was rare because you're told to save it for festivals. So I'd seen one of my shorts, and I weirdly enough was going to be in Sydney, in a couple of weeks' time. So I believe that they were actively trying to find someone who was Asian. So it was probably a timing thing as well, which is like, that's this industry. It's like, yes, it helps if you have talent and you work hard, but it's just timing. Like, she had heard about me that there was a unicorn of a Asian Australian director. Which again, I just want to stress, like, it was a different time. Like, I mean, it's not hugely common now, but it was like, but in 2011 it was few and far between. And since then it was like the first 3-4 years, like they really can't, they just can't do very much for you in Australia. They might be able to set up some meetings and whatever, but it's not like, I don't know. I think I went into it with a thing because I had watched all of Entourage. I was like, oh, that's what they do. I'll get jobs now. And it wasn't really like that. They help, especially at the start, they helped massage my career, but I had to drive it.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's, what was great was I was so scared in the first 3 years, because I was like, oh, I still need to keep impressing them. There was that need to make sure that I was pulling my weight. And then I think I stopped caring because I turned 30 and just didn't give a shit anymore. And I'm like, oh well, I'm just gonna be who I am. And it was actually quite I don't know, it's quite good, because we have a relationship where she I can really like be a bit bratty and complain, and she'll say, stop that. Feel grateful. And I need that voice. Yeah.
Amazing. Sophie, just quickly, because I know we've got a lot of questions on here, your journey to finding representation, how did that happen?
Look, mine's going to sound so weird and out of the ordinary, but so I had been making for a long time before I made my first feature drama. Like, I wasn't a young woman, and I was a producer as well. I still am a producer as well. So agents and I have a very particular relationship, and they're not, I have a love-hate thing with all agents, and sorry agents watching, and I hope my agent's not watching. But I mean, it wasn't until after I made 52 Tuesdays, I won the directing prize at Sundance, that an agent ever approached me. I'd never had a producer approach me, let alone an agent. And I wasn't sure I wanted one. And they kind of were there for a while, and then they got annoyed at me because they were like, people want this. But in some ways, like, I've mostly made my own work. And so it's sort of like, do you need an agent in that way? It's a different career path. Like, definitely to be put in front of TV producers, 100% you should be working with an agent. But for some reason in Australia, I haven't, because it's a very small industry, and I want to be pretty upfront with people. Both Animals and Leo Grant, though, came through my agents, but not necessarily because they were pushing hard for anything. I have a manager at Anonymous Content, and she's amazing, and she does a lot of, that's a different relationship. It's like a conversation about what you want to make and where you want to be. And
how did you find her?
She approached me. She used to be at another agency, and I moved with her to Anonymous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. It's such a weird and wacky world, the representation one. Yeah. I agree. I am not necessarily in love with the whole system, but it's a bit of a necessary complication, added layer, let's say, and sometimes like figuring out how to make it work for you and with you and in collaboration is really important. I want to pause the conversation for a second, actually just go back to some 101s, just in case there are people on the call who aren't really sure what a director actually does, because I think there are so many like big names in terms like what's a producer, what's a director, who's a cinematographer, and it can get a little confusing for people who are like, oh, I think I want to make movies, and I've made some stuff for YouTube, I've made some stuff for TikTok, and now I think I want to be a director, but I'm not actually even sure what that is. Would anyone like to have a go at explaining, and sorry for the motorbikes going past.
Rosie, I think a lot of the industry doesn't know what a director does, including producers.
I was asking
That's my theory.
People, including myself.
I had a really interesting thing happen once, and I was directing a sketch comedy called Skid House. And it is that thing of going, it's a machine and we all know each other and I know all the comedians. Here's the sketch, and and I hurt my back. Stupid. Like, and I'm kind of, I've set it up and I'm going, okay. And the first day they made me go off set and go and get my back seen to. And I went, it should be fine. I'll be fine. I came back and that sketch was shit. And I went, how can that happen? I'm not that important. That's what I felt. I'm not that important. I'm just one person. But it's that thing that I feel like I take in that job. I take all the information from all the different, from the script, from the actors, from the heads of department, from this, and I hold it all together. I've got all that stuff in my brain, and I go, so I know that I can go, oh, it's that, oh, it's that, oh, it's that, it's that. And it's a collaboration. Like, I'm not going, I'm the queen of the world and it will be the way I want it to be. It kind of is. But it is that thing of going, you hold the universe in your head for that job, for that project, so you can kind of be that driver. That's kind of what I kind of that's what that experience showed me when I walked off set one day, and it fell to pieces because there's not one person holding not one person running towards the goal with the football. It's we definitely dropped the footy that day. And the other thing is, you're the only one that works with the actors. There's no one else out to help on that. As far as getting caught up with the shots and this and that, you've got a whole department of camera and all that sort of stuff and storyboarders where you can, the DOP will come up with shots too. You know what you want, but there's someone there. There's someone in every other place except that one. That's you and the actors. So I think that's a really important part of being a director, is that communication and that inviting them into that world and facilitating for them.
And in this metaphor, is the footy the story?
Yeah. And it was a sketch. It was a comedy sketch.
Sure, but even the sketch, there's a something like that core story element that needs to happen in a particular thing. Yeah. Yeah. Corrie, you got another thought or opinion on that one?
Oh, I thought that was, that's beautifully put. I've also heard people describe the director as the conductor of an orchestra, which I think is also quite right, in that the piece can still be played without a conductor, but there's just, it's never quite the touchdown that you want it to be. And I don't know, I think in addition to that, for me, the director is the vessel for empathy for the audience. Like the director is the only person on set who should always be asking, yes, but what is it supposed to feel like, to every single person, every single department. And so I really believe in the director holding the emotional emotional control of a piece.
On that, I'd love to pivot into what those relationships are with those heads of departments, with those different departments, and navigating the conversations around how to achieve those emotional set pieces when you're talking with the lighting department, if you're talking with the art or with costume or with makeup. Like, how do you manage those relationships with all of those different key, really incredible collaborators that you've got with you, to find the magic that happens in between the combined visions, whilst also driving towards these goalposts with your football? It's a big one. Yeah, Sophie?
I'll start. I'll start.
Yeah, I think Sophie's definitely the one to start with this.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say to my crew, my heads of department and my whole crew, like, I'm always trying to express the value and the privilege of having them on the set with me, and that I want their experience and their expertise, and that even with all of that, there are times where I'm going to make decisions that they won't agree with. And it's because we hold it, like Daina was saying, it's like we hold all of the different things that are kind of leading to the finished project in our heads. And so sometimes that decision seems crazy to someone else. But, you know, I'm always trying to express that to the team so that they kind of understand that in some form. Every relationship's different, so it's almost impossible to talk about this, I find. Like for my, you know, working with production designer or costume designer, for me, that's a lot about talking about character, but looking at palettes and mood boards and finding the style. And I bring a lot of references and they bring a lot of references. And, you know, I find that a very kind of natural process kind of thing. I mostly work with Brian as a cinematographer, who's my partner. And so that's a different thing, a very shared kind of history. But I've worked with other cinematographers and same thing, like references, conversations about what it is that matters in the story. Always just, you know, Corrie's empathy machine thing or empathy conduit thing is great. I think being on set, like, there's this presence that's required, which is kind of the audience, is like you're trying to see what it will feel like to watch this new as a film for the first time every time. And so presence training, like being there in that moment, is the most important thing on set, that where all that other stuff has to go away. Try not to work with assholes. That's the biggest thing.
That's the hard thing. Yeah.
Zero asshole policy. Like, and that sometimes they're inextricably linked to projects, and trying to extricate them once they've revealed their true colors can be complicated.
Yeah. And you can't tell if someone's an asshole straight away.
Yeah, I was gonna say they trick you.
Yeah,
they so
really
trick you. Yeah. It's a really interesting thing. I'm going to say something controversial because I wanted to pick up on the empathy thing. I think empathy is dead right. I think the whole thing about, you know, even in writers' rooms, I've gone through this where often in a writer's room, I'm the only woman in the room. Happens a lot. Shouldn't happen. Starting to change now, but it's not an intellectual thing. And I find a lot in those rooms, I've been caught in an intellectual, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, watching whether it's a piece of television or a piece of film, it's a sensual, emotional experience. And that's where we should all be coming from. And I think it's really interesting I find as a female director, it's coming at things that way. I don't know if Corrie and Sophie feel this. And look, it has been with male DOPs in the past. It's that can be a bit of a, you know, because camera is kind of the last bastion, and people can strike me down if I'm being too general. It feels like it's the last bastion of blokedom. And you know, we're getting more and more fabulous women DOPs all the time, but you really feel it often as a female director. I felt it obviously earlier in my career more than now, of just, you know, not being able to create a pathway to connect. That, and look, I'm probably on a different subject, but that has been hard in the past to forge that relationship with some male DOPs, because filmmaking came from historically has come from a very male place in the past, and it's changing now, but I found that difficult early on.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because so much of the onset process, like a very traditional process that hasn't changed in decades, is often, but it's so cerebral all the time. You're always logistically trying to, it's dictated by schedule, certainly in television, where but the form is craving to be emotionally driven. So, and I think the director is the person at crossroads trying to, you know, steer the whole team into onto the, and having to make the decision of when to do what and where. And there is something about the machine, or like literal, you know, enormous bits of metal that you're having to work with and walk past, that is a reminder of it's not a place for a certain type of person. It's not very welcoming. And how do you remain? And for a director, certainly for me, I'm always like, okay, I need to come up with my own tools and process to try and remain in this moment. So I remember to feel and not to hide or not to freeze. Like there's a lot of directing where the fight or flight or freeze response is triggered all the time. So like getting home at the end of the day, my adrenaline is just like nuts, even for weeks after a shoot wraps. I think I figured out it takes me about 3.5 weeks to just calm down and sleep somewhat normally.
Wow.
And for me, that's like, you know, exactly what Corrie said, but and I find that there's a temptation to like prove that you know what you're doing, or to like have this version that's like, I've got the answer here and I don't want to show anything else. And actually when it works really well is when you're not. Well, for me, it works best when I'm not like that. Okay, here I am, the open wound again, vulnerable. And it is amazing when you're on a set like that. The set I was just on, like both Emma and Daryl, the other actor, and I all cried a couple of times. And like, it was a comedy. So I'm not sure why, but
which sorts of crying?
We were in the emotion of it a lot. And so things would get, you know, it was 2 actors on a set doing like 12-page days. And, you know, it was intensive emotionally, but you kind of had to sit in that place. And that's what you can do when you have like, well, it's me directing and Emma leading it as well, that you are able to work like that, because that's the most important thing on the set. Like everything else falls away, and that's unusual, but it's crazy that it's unusual because it is an emotional art form that we're making. Do you know?
Absolutely. This is all fascinating, and I could listen to you three just talk forever. We do have a ticking clock and we've got a lot of questions, so I might rapid fire some questions and let's have someone jump in with an answer and see if we can match them out, so that people feel like they're really getting their bang for their buck. Okay, this is a really interesting one. In terms of being a director, do you feel like you need to have a certain brand and manage that brand across the different works? So it's obviously you've all worked across different genres, across different formats, art forms. What would be a response to that?
I have found with the American thing, having a story was very helpful. And I had one, so it was easy. I wasn't even making it up. You know, I kind of went in there going, I'm a big genre nut. I love science fiction. And I wasn't really doing much of it in Australia. You know, I kind of did lots of, you know, true history things, which I love doing. Don't get me wrong, that was all great. But I really love, you know, speculative fiction. So that's kind of why I went. You know, I wanted to experiment with different things. So I can actually sit there and go, I've done this in Australia, but what I really want to do is branch out and do different genres, and that's kind of why I'm here. And that did fuel a lot of interest, you know, and because I had that story to say where I've been and why I was coming. So that was like a hook that helped. But here in Australia, I don't know. I don't feel like, I don't feel like it's a big deal, but it might be there and I'm just not seeing it.
Could be. Well, let's, because I guess that kind of also leads into the question of how do you choose a project? How do you choose what to work on? What do you know what to prioritize? Yes, Corrie.
I guess these days, when I am approaching the project, I think, do I want to roll out of bed for this? And if the answer is no, then I say no. Like, and that's that's a little facetious, but also not. It's really quite true, because I think COVID really showed me or reminded me like the balance between work and life. You know, my indoor plants are really flourishing now, but the last 3 months I've been working interstate, and I've just returned and they're all kind of wilted and limp, and I feel really sad. And I'm like, that matters to me, then that should matter, because my work is going to be better when something else other than my work matters to me. Yeah, so it's as simple as that. And like, you know, my choices are, I went through a stage where my choices were linked to what I identified as where my skills were lacking. So I kind of thought, you know, I want to do more stunt sequences. So I did Wentworth, or I wanted to work with a really big cast. And I sort of chose projects based on that. And I'm sort of coming back at a stage now where they were really great and I adored those experiences, but I just need to, I'm sort of coming back to, okay, so what's the grassroots of why I wanted to do this, which is linked to my passion and my beliefs, and that integrity is my power now. So that, and which is choice. But yeah, bedtime.
Amazing. The competition between bed and working. So actually, this is a question that I can actually answer quickly. Does new voices mean young voices, when you were talking about the industry being interested in new voices coming in? And the simple answer is no, actually. It means fresh perspectives on stories we may or may not have seen before, really. And that may be a fresh perspective from lived authentic experience from various cultures, or as various genders, or with various abilities or neurotypicalities or non-neurotypicalities, also different age brackets, or also being a carer. There's lots of different unique lived experiences that have not been accommodated for or encouraged within the film industry for a long time, particularly in Australia and around the world. So those new voices are not necessarily young voices, they are just fresh perspectives. So let's just keep encouraging lots of people to keep doing stuff. So we've got a question here around how do scripts come to you three? Do they only come through your agents? Do you get sent them personally? Do they come through friends? If scripts are coming through to you directly, is that a thing, or is that not a thing for you? Maybe
mine will come through my, I'm sorry, so mine will come from my agent, and I just, because otherwise I'll forget that I have it.
Yep.
So I need that person to remind me. That could be an assistant, that could be anyone, but just just to make sure you're on top of all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, agents or writers or producers that I already have a relationship with, or self-driven. They're sort of the three paths.
Okay. Oh, Sophie, you're on mute.
A lot of mine do come to me directly, but that's not the easiest path. It can be quite frustrating, actually, and oftentimes those things slide away through my agent. But yeah, I mean, I will choose based on like what I really believe in. So it's kind of like there has to be a good reason to kind of be reading something, I think, for me.
Yeah, cool. We've got a thread that's going on in the Q&A at the moment, which is something that might be a little tricky for us to answer, but I would also possibly like some of the Screenworks team to help out with this one. It's a conversation around what do you do if you don't have filmmaker friends? If you don't have anyone else in your crew to help you go and make that first film, to go and try things out, do you recommend people giving it a shot themselves and trying to helm all of the various roles that filmmaking requires, or possibly trying to track down where there might be other filmmakers somewhere within the not too distant proximity to be able to collaborate with? Jeannie, do you have any thoughts on this one, particularly for people living in quite remote or regional places?
Yeah, I do actually, because something that we're very keen on at Screenworks is actually organising networking events. And I think that the knack often, particularly if you are feeling isolated, either because you're in a remote area or because you are on your own and you just don't know any other practitioners, is to tap into places, including Screenworks, that offer networking opportunities, because it's the easiest thing in the world, and particularly in this day and age where a lot of things run online, to keep an eye out for things where you can connect. So you're never really on your own in the modern world. You find a virtual networking group, and I can certainly throw up some links actually to things to give people ideas. I don't know how the rest of the panel feel about the networking opportunity?
Well, look, I remember going when I decided that it was time to swap over from acting to directing, and I went to VCA film nights and all that sort of stuff, and just started to get to know different people and who was making what, and just to see what was happening. And that kind of just opened my brain to how I might go about it. I found it really helpful.
Yeah, and you know, directing's a really lonely job. Like, it still is. The majority of my friends just in life are unfortunately from the industry, and it's, you know, nice to be able to talk about it, but like the work itself is very, very lonely, because there's like that's the point of a director, unless you're in a co-directing team, but you are the only person that is doing that role. And it's the exhausting thing about it is a lot of, generally speaking, so much of it is a faux bravado that you are putting on, other than when, you know, the magical moments when you can expose your wound, as Sophie just described beautifully, and that is magic, and it can happen. But yeah, largely speaking, like, you know, it's like being the captain of the ship. You can't panic when everything's going down, as it often does on set. You're going, you know, it's burning, but you're like, it's fine, here's how we're going to do it instead, and it's still going to be great.
Yeah, if you lose your shit, everybody does.
Yeah,
because it's that, you know, and it filters through that entire crew so quickly that this is going to be a terrible day.
Yeah, it's infectious.
You've just got to keep going.
Can I devil's advocate on that for 1 second? Do you find that there is, and I am partially speaking from experience here, that there can be a thing on a set, particularly when it's quite a male-led crew, where they keep pushing you, but like not in this, like going a step too far, and like possibly require, I don't know, this might have just been me making things up in a way that wasn't actually happening, but in a way they're just trying to push
it was happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I like myself. Excellent. So
can I just step back on that question though, Rosie? I just want to say to that person who was writing about the friends thing, you know, I said that I make films with my friends, but those friends weren't filmmakers when we started out. Like we, you know, and, you know, one was working as an admin officer, but he was doing creative writing on the side. And like, we worked out how to make things together just by like trying it, like doing things. And we're quite pretty like intense people. So we kind of, you know, so I pulled people in that I thought had skills in certain areas that didn't want to be filmmakers, that are now filmmakers. Like that was just sort of how I needed to make. But not everyone does that. So Brian, my partner, is a cinematographer and editor. The reason he is because he made skateboarding videos growing up. So he was the only filmmaker on that. And Maya Newell, who we work with a lot, she shoots and she works with lots of people who aren't filmmakers. She doesn't work with any other filmmakers. Just the people that she's filming become her collaborators. And, you know, it's not about like, you just have talented friends, I don't think. Do you know? It's like there's so many pathways. Like when we say this, it's like you could network, or your best friend could be a great producer, or it's someone that you don't know. Like there just isn't an answer. You just go, well, how do I make? What's the thing I want to make? Is there a way I can do it? What is the way? Like every time as well, I think every project is like that. Yeah.
And actually on that, before going back to the other one, the first film I produced was a feature, and that happened by accident. I didn't intend to produce, and I didn't intend to produce a feature. And I had no experience. I didn't study filmmaking. I'd done an acting training, and I'd been doing some acting, and I'd been on a couple of sets. But because I'd produced events before, and I understood how to kind of pull a team together, and I understood what a schedule and a budget kind of looks like, I just was like, I figured I'd just give it a shot and see what happened. And then I realized very quickly how much I didn't know and how much I needed to learn. But it was,
But it is a lonely thing. But especially when you first, like I remember years, even when I was working with all these guys thinking, well, why am I not part of an industry? Or like, how do you make this step that is like suddenly to being it? And the truth is, and maybe this is also a regional thing because I'm in Adelaide, it takes time. It just takes a long time. And hopefully that time you become good at what you do, by just kind of continuing to try and do it. But some people have the rare experience of kind of popping straight out into something, but in a lot of ways, I don't envy them, actually, because you want to get good at what you do, and you just have to kind of keep muscling in.
It's all about practice and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. No one just kind of goes, oh my God, I'm naturally this director person. You're not. You just go, you drive it yourself. You just go, I think I like this. I'll take that step and the next step and the next step and the next step. And you make mistakes along the way, and hopefully you end up where you want to be.
Yeah, and practice is the greatest word, because visual artists and dancers, they use the word practice, and that means you get into the studio every day and you do it, and you are practicing. It is your practice. Like, so rare that we get to do that, or you just try and do it on everything that you can, like make things,
Exactly. I mean, I go back to that idea of, choosing between doing film and video, way back then in uni, and knowing I was going to get to do more of it over here, so I'll do that. I'm not naturally gifted, and my story is not going to just come out beautifully right now. I need to practice and stuff it up and then redo it. I think that's it's key that we do that. It was really interesting. I'm sorry. I remember doing a development workshop back when it was AFC. So Screen Australia's AFC, and a Dutch producer was out, and I remember him saying, we're all there with films, and he was saying, practice, 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 do everything, do soaps, do this, do this, do this, do this, do everything, so you're ready for your film. And you could feel the filmmaker going, I'm never going to do movies. And it's that thing of going, no, you need to do everything. I feel so blessed that I got to do, be part of that 22 episode a year phenomenon that was happening back then, and I'd really hope it happens again, because you can really, really practice.
Yeah, 100%. And that practice is one for yourself, but also in navigating what those relationships are with the rest of the team, and that collaboration, practicing collaboration consistently. And that kind of goes to the question that we touched on earlier, but it might be nice to look back around to, particularly on the back of the last bit, where we're getting to around working with other departments and HODs and how to navigate those sometimes really tricky relationships. And I guess the question I was leading to was, it felt like on that particular day, on that particular moment, the rest of the HOD, some of the teams were pushing my buttons, and I actually felt like I needed to tell them to back up and make a stand, so they knew where to stop. They knew where the line was. Like, I'll laugh and I'll joke at the things up until so far, and then I'm like, you need to stop. I'm going to take this seriously. How do you know like how to navigate those relationships, particularly when you are potentially working with friends, and those friends it can always get complicated if they're friends or not.
There was one example, and it's not with a friend, of being pushed by a producing director, a bloke. And, I had to do, I was doing a Turkish prison riot, and it's lots of action. And there is a bizarre thing, I don't know if Corrie and Sophie have found this, that, girls can't do action. Anyway, it shits me completely. It's like, it's not actually real, like it's choreography. But and you could feel it. There was whispers in the hallways, and oh my God, how will she be able to do the action? And we're doing it on the day, and I've done the whole thing. I mean, I'm a dancer, I've choreographed the whole thing. I've got it on a map. It's this, and I've worked my ass off getting it exactly choreographed perfectly. I know exactly where everyone's going, I know where all the cameras are. And he kept going, I don't get it. And I go, okay, so it's this and this and this and this and this and this and this. I still don't get it. Okay, I'll go through it again. It's this and 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 this. And it kept going. And finally he kept going, I don't get it. And I finally just went, why not? And he went, okay then. I'm like, you motherfucker. Oh, sorry, this is being recorded. But anyway, he was just doing it to make me prove myself.
Yeah.
It was he He didn't know whether he got it or not.
It's just wasting your time. It's just a power.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess I knew that inside out. I was sure of it.
Yeah.
You know, if you do your work and do your homework and you're sure of it, trust yourself. You're sure of it. Just because some person asks you or questions you doesn't mean you got it wrong.
Yeah.
Hang on to it and just no. This is what I want. You'll know in your heart if there's a point to be made. If someone's raised a really good point, you'll know. You go, actually, you're right, because you've already done all your work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find that I have in the past spent more energy doing what you just did, Rosie, second guessing, am I imagining this aggression? So I'm not even getting to the confrontation or pushback that is probably quite a satisfying release, because I don't know if you know, if I'm being passive, because in Australia it's generally a lot more low key in trying to confront. Yeah. So I am at a stage where I just, if I'm feeling it, I make myself kind of go, it's happening. And it's weird because it almost allows me to reclaim the power a bit. Because I know, because instead of being like, no, actually, I'm just being sensitive. I'm just making it up and swallowing that, and you know, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I might take that one on board. Recognize the game when you feel it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone's different, but for me, I spend, you know, that stuff like that keeps me up at night thinking, is that, am I being undermined or am I imagining it? And it just, you know, the anxiety cycle rattles on. Whereas if I just kind of go, yes, it is happening, I can do something about it. I can either like have the conversation or be a bit more active in the response.
Sure. Do you feel like, and this is leading in, segueing into a question that we've got in the Q&A box, and just being mindful of the time as well. Corrie, and sorry to put you on the spot with this one, but do you feel like intersectionality plays a role in that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I in my experience, race is a bigger factor for me than being a woman. I also am aware, like, because you know, I do wear a cap and stuff on set, that I can look quite young sometimes, because I'm often asked if I'm like, you know, doing an attachment, or if I'm the caterer, or just anything. I've never been asked if I'm the director ever. So yeah, and you know, it's so complex because it's a conversation that I'm having with myself to unlearn my own upbringing, because you know, my parents are people who denies racism exists. So they see it as a victimhood thing. So they blame the victims. So it's been a very long conversation for me in the last couple of years to kind of go, oh, actually, you know, the experiences I had 10 years ago when I was a PA was actually quite racist. And instead of kind of, whereas for ages, it was an anecdote where a joke was told and I laughed along. And now I'm like, actually, I was the joke. And it's quite a, you know, it does rock you a bit. So yeah, I think I would have a very different response to this question in a year's time, you know, because it's just an evolving process.
Yeah, it is absolutely evolving. Do you feel like having, do you try and have someone as part of your team that you can debrief this with on jobs? A go-to person?
Well, I think now that I know how to put words to it, it's been a lot easier. But I don't quite feel like I need to go out of my way to. I also just don't have time on set to talk about, you know, whether something is, well, I hope yeah, I haven't felt like I needed to.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me, there isn't a simple answer to this, because I also don't want to make it about the one person. Like, it's not just about my experience or someone else's experience that they felt is or isn't racist, because it's actually a conversation we should be having as an industry.
Absolutely.
A two-sided conversation.
Yep, 100%. And you're getting some comments through here involving from people wanting to be part of this conversation. It is a broader conversation from the people who have experienced it, but then also how as a broader industry we can all shift this culture, whether it's about race, whether it's about disability, disengagement, whatever it is, and that's locking people out, we need to broaden it back out again. We're getting the absolute wrap up, and we've got so many questions we haven't answered. I'm so sorry to everyone who's put questions in that we didn't quite get to. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with all three of you. I would love to ask one last question as a quick whip around. What would you say is a superpower you bring from outside of your filmmaking world that helps you with what you do?
I cook a lot. It's a hobby and also a passion. It's probably what I would be doing if not for filmmaking. For me, it's being able to do things that I can finish in the one go, because so much of directing takes years or months, or even writing, you never get to see the end product. So I really like, and I think that's also not dissimilar. I'm trying to garden more, but I'm not good at it, so I don't like to do it. But yeah, having projects where I can just finish in the one day, it has been very calming.
Amazing, amazing. Daina?
I thank every day that my mum sent me to dance in school when I was 5, because I draw upon those skills all the time, constantly. You kind of go, you know, what was that all about with the jazz tap ballet? And it's every single day they come into play.
Do you also dance as a release?
Well, the last time I did it, I really hurt myself. So I just have to be very careful. I'm just injured. I'm injured. All those years of dancing just injured me.
Yeah.
I'm always at the physio.
So that's a whole nother conversation I will have with you another time. Yeah, same. And Sophie?
You know what? I only work, really. I'm like a really...
That is not true.
That's not true.
I have a 15-year-old, Audrey, and they're non-binary, and they're a like school strike for climate activist, and they're really, I mean, them and the sort of other people in my life who are kind of really driven to make the world better, they're more my superpower than anything that I have myself. You know, they're the people that are kind of like constantly in conversation with me, I think.
Yeah, the humans around you.
So should have mentioned my children. That was terrible of me. I feel guilty. Oh my God, my children.
Oh, hi, Jeannie. Thanks for joining us back again.
Hi, I'm just utterly absorbed by this conversation and by turns entertained and fascinated. And now I want to be a director.
You should be.
I just want to say, I mean, and for everyone, I think on behalf of everyone that's joined us for this today, it's been a most inspiring and absorbing chat, as I say, and I really hope that it's given some comfort, inspiration and encouragement to everybody out there who's even, you know, the idea of being a director is just a twinkle in the eye. And if you're already on the ladder, keep going, because these lovely speakers today have really proven that it is the hard graft, the determination and the passion and a sense of humour that keeps you going. So I want to say a huge and heartfelt thank you to our speakers, to Corrie Chen, Daina Reid and Sophie Hyde, and of course to our excellent moderator, Rosie Lourde. Thank you so much, Rosie, for guiding a brilliant conversation this afternoon.
Not at all. Thank you to Screenworks, the Gender Matters Taskforce and Screen Australia for putting all this together. It's panels like this that really help all of us along the way, regardless of where we are in our journeys, and they're so vital.
Absolutely. And on that happy note, I'll wish everyone a happy afternoon. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you all.